of your younger selves.
Oh. Okay. On a three. 1, 2, 3.
Chasing sky, how your vibes, yeah. By all means, tryna flex like Hot 97. By all means, triple threat, Malcolm X. By all means, can't stop till I got the top spot right next to Miss Erica Incense and Prince. Product of joy, magic and muscle. Van McCoy with the hustle. We've been working circles, small as pinky rings. My people play their position, puzzle pieces complete the vision. Yeah, we've been working like the Energizer Bob non-stop. Bad bunnies drive to the drum line now. We've been working, we've been working, yeah, we've been working, yeah, we've been.
아니 어렸을 때 제 모습을 보는 게 저는 왜 에일리언인지 잘 모르겠어요. 난 너무 귀여웠는데.
Last time we talked, you had nothing to say. You chose to walk, give what we had away. I hope you get what you're looking for, but babe, with me, you close the door on everything we could have been. Don't go thinking we could be friends. No, you can't bring us back from the dead. 'Cause when you know, you know, and when you don't, when it ends, it ends. When it ends, it ends. I really thought we might have been it, so my heart was shattered when it took the hit. Oh, I can't imagine doing all that again, even for one night.
How is it normal or alien for you guys to sing in the shower?
1, 2, 3. Normal.
Oh, I can't imagine doing all that again, even for one night, to see where it went. Here's the thing, you made your bed, I just got your stay out of my head. No, you can't bring us back from the dead. 'Cause when you know, you know, and when you don't, when it ends, it ends.
Hey, what's your shower song? What's your shower song?
The Dress and
Huh?
Dijon. The Dress.
Dijon?
Yeah.
Alright. What's your shower song? 7?
Normal.
Normal? Okay.
You know, you know, and when you don't, when it ends, it ends. When it ends, it ends. End of the road, nowhere to go. You cut the ties, you burn the road.
뭘로 불러요? 아 저는
한 씨가
불러요?
머리에만
안 들어요? 그래요?
You burn the road. So don't let me see your name lighting on my phone when it was you who let go of everything we could have been. Is it sinking in all your regret? No, you can't bring us back from the dead. 'Cause when you know, you know, and when you don't, when it ends, it ends. When it ends, it ends. I don't leave room to guess. When it ends, it ends. When it ends, it ends.
What's your shower song? 7?
Normal.
Normal? Okay.
Tell him that you love him, but he's already gone, darling. Did you make 2 wrongs? Know that daddy never made a right before, darling. You were never made to be the judge, darling. He never changed his way for me to budge, darling. It's feeling like a cold dark winter and the sun still behind the trees, yeah. She asked me if I had another minute and I ain't had the heart
What's your shower song?
Normal.
Normal.
Kerosene, dopamine, chemical release.
Yeah. It's feeling like a cold dark winter and the sun still behind the trees. Yeah. She asked me if I had another minute and I didn't have the heart to leave. One day I'll be everything you ever wanted. Until then I'll be out here fighting like it's nothing. Through the cold dark winter. Or did you say goodbye, knowing damn well everybody gon' die someday? Did you waste my time, knowing damn well we can press rewind? One day I'll be everything you ever wanted. Until then I'll be out here fighting like it's nothing. Through the cold dark winter.
Your first single is Swim, but they want to know who is the strongest swimmer.
우리 다 수영 그렇게 잘하진 않아.
And everyone's not pretty good at, but I think JK.
JK,
yes.
Dark winter and the sun still behind the trees. Yeah. She asked me if I had another minute and I didn't have the heart to leave. Yeah. It's feeling like a cold dark winter and the sun
We're not the good swimmers.
still behind the trees. Yeah. She asked me if I had another minute and I didn't have the heart to leave. One day I'll be everything you ever wanted. Until then I'll be out here fighting like it's nothing. Through the cold dark winter. It's feeling like a cold dark winter.
I think JK.
JK, yes.
It's feeling like a cold dark winter. It's feeling like a cold dark winter and the sun still behind the trees. Yeah. She asked me if I had another minute and I didn't have the heart to leave. Yeah. It's feeling like a cold dark winter and the sun still behind the trees. Yeah. She asked me if I had another minute and I didn't have the heart to leave. It's feeling like a cold dark winter and the sun still behind the trees. Yeah. She asked me if I had another minute and I didn't have the heart to leave. Yeah. It's feeling like a cold dark winter. And the sun still behind the trees. Yeah. She asked me if I had another minute and I didn't have the heart to leave. Yeah. It's feeling like a cold dark winter and the sun still behind the trees. She asked me if I had another minute and I didn't have the heart to leave.
Say it louder, say it louder. Feel the moment, feel the power. Bring the animal back to life. Bring the energy one more time. If you feel like letting go, you can take control. You can turn this all to something beautiful where you feel life gets you down, 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 gets you down, down, down. Say it louder, say it louder. Feel the moment, feel the power. Bring the animal back to life. Bring the energy one more time. Bring the energy one more time. Bring the energy one more time. Say it louder, say it louder. You're the question, you're the answer. Bring the animal back to life. Bring the energy one more time. If you feel like letting go, you can take control. You can turn this all to something beautiful where you feel life gets you down, 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 gets you down, down, down. Say it louder, say it louder. Feel the moment, feel the power. Bring the animal back to life.
clear a bottle of Cabernet. Wanna stay home, not even drink. Wanna get out of my own head. Wanna lay down, overthink. I wanna cry every tear I got. Put on a dress, be a stranger's dream. Lock up this heart of mine, wanna wear it on my sleeve. I kinda wanna hate you, but I wanna love you too. I wanna hold you close and let you go, find someone new. And I wish it wasn't, but my mind's made up in two. What's killing me the most is knowing two things can be true. Wanna throw away your vanity. Wanna wear it to sleep tonight. Wanna wipe our slate clean. Wanna pick this thing up right where we left off. Wanna block your number, take one last time, make it another. Wish I was one or the other. I kinda wanna hate you, but I wanna love you too. I wanna hold you close and let you go, find someone new. And I wish it wasn't, but my mind's made up in two. What's killing me the most is knowing two things can be true. If it's black, it's white. If it's wrong, it's right. Soon as I pick one, I switch sides. I kinda wanna hate you, but I wanna love you too. I wanna hold you close and let you go, find someone new. And I wish it wasn't, but my mind's made up in two. What's killing me the most is knowing two things can be true. Two things can be true. My mind's made up in two. What's killing me the most is knowing two things can be true. Two things can be true. Two things can be true.
I hear you been asking about me, where I've been and where I sleep. It's hard to find me if you really want to. Turns past that takes a cool sign. Same bobcat, same moon boots, trying to outrun the thought of you. But in this town the truth don't stop. You can't live in a town this small. You can change your mind, but not your past. Every mile just feels like moving half. You can change my name in your phone. You can't leave in a town this small. I moved on, but not too far, just down the road from who we are. You can change your hair, change your street, but you can't outrun the memories. Nah, I ain't mad, I just laugh sometimes. How love can fade, but this town stays mine. They say small towns just don't forget. I guess you're right about that. You can change your mind, but not your past. Every mile just feels like moving half. You can change my name in your phone. You can't leave in a town this small. Every red light still knows your car. Every porch light still breaks my heart. You
yeah. Pop in, burning like this, ain't checking my wrist. Third is my shift. Rolling all night like flex. We look at the clips, these credits are lit. Stacking miles, I'm far away from home. I got what I wished for. Taking that risk, I'm checking my list. Marathon man, it's run legit. Can't let it slip when it's all in my grip. Talking too much, he probably not it. All that I did, calls I missed, time I spent. Yeah, that's that blood, sweating my love. Checking out tug, out of the mud. Rough only get picked up like a truck. Win in the clutch, that is a must. Wake up, get to it, ain't nothing about it. The only way to it is do it, no way around it. I'm 40, we cruising like the Caribbean with mileage. I'ma always be solid, I'm a young brother with knowledge. Go do the science, dog. Always up like a pilot, dog. Look at my eyes, I'm tired, dog. The time that it takes, I'm aiming for the space. Gotta build my empire, dog. I make sales, not a buyer, dog. You don't compare, he a liar, dog. Stack it up till it can't fold, I just did 10 in a row, I just did 10 in a row, I just did 10, gotta go, Stack it up till it can't fold, I just did 10 in a row, I just did 10 in a row, I just did 10, gotta go, 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 go. Get off your phone, can't sit at a green light. Look how that shine reflect like a ring light. This is my podium, talking to 3 mics. I'm not no Brennan, have they the team winning. If I said it, you know that I'm in it. They tryna live on the corner, I bend it. Can't take those chances, ain't talking about Bennett. When they too lazy, they talking like critics. Why you so mad? Go get a bag. I'm in the lab, I don't move the same. Off of the pass, for back in my lane. I cannot sit in one place like a stain. Sharing that paper like ripping the page. I'm gonna be the last one to remain. Walk with the nearest, I'm spitting that flame. Hop out the cycle like it ain't a thing. Doing them hills, we running.
Do you know,
Hey, so baby, we gonna dip. Was I'm bad in them apartments. Started hitting the target, started flooding the market. Started moving smarter until we runs about the garden. Stack it up till it can't fold, I just did 10 in a row, I just did 10 in a row, I just did 10, gotta go, Stack it up till it can't fold, I just did 10 in a row, I just did 10 in a row, I just did 10, gotta go.
do you know,
Go, 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 go.
이때까지 먹은 것 중에 제일 매웠어?
난 7번도 제일 매웠어. 난 7번
8번.
Keep those hands up for tonight.